Welcome to Forensic Friday,
where we examine the intersection of true crime, psychology, and the heart of being human in the middle of it all. Hello.
Hi.
My mic is finally working.
I know it was not working.
I sounded like a robot. Now that I sounded like a robot and it was cutting in and out.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, I go to reboot my computer and Mac's getting ready for bed, right? Because his room's right next to my office. And he comes in and he's like, so I messed with it earlier. I'm like, what do you mean you messed with it? And so he said, I kind of like moved it a little. And I'm like, what do you mean, McAllen? So I go and I pull the fluffy thing off, and he had left it like half on. And so it like indented in the mic. And then he tried to put it back on, right? So I love that he's honest. He doesn't get in trouble when he's honest, right? So I said, hey, bud, I appreciate you coming in and telling me, because he was looking at me like, am I in trouble? I'm like, nope, told me the truth. He goes, we were like, why'd you mess with it, bud? Gare asked him, why'd you mess with it? And he goes, it was fluffy and I wanted to. I'm like,
you know what?
You can't
I
argue
mess with mine
that.
all the time.
I mean, you know what? It's fine. It is. It's like so soft. You do mess with it. I mean,
Yeah, sometimes I rub my face on mine.
I just thought that was so funny. And then the reason I'm late logging on is Mac's buddy at school, girl buddy at school, fell down and hurt her leg. And he is a wreck over it. And he needed to talk to her. So we had a little phone call, me, her mom, and the two kids. And they like checked on each other. And he was making sure that she's okay. And it was very cute. But he wouldn't even, he goes, I wouldn't even open my new Lego set until I knew how you were doing.
That's so cute.
That isn't like the most romantic thing a 10-year-old could say, They're just buddies. It's like the most innocent little friendship, but it's so sweet. And they've been besties since like first grade.
I love that.
But he was disturbed. He's like, she hurt her leg on the playground and I heard her crying in the office, and he's like unwell over it.
Aw.
I know. So cute. Good. So we hope you feel better soon. You know who you are.
Yes.
Mom. The kid's probably not listening, but the mom might listen.
Hopefully not.
We're thinking of your girl,
Yes.
Okay. So
let's just jump in.
Okay. I'm sure you guys know, and I'm going to pull up my notes now and send them over to you.
Sorry, you can see my ranch bottle in the image.
Your ranch bottle?
Yeah.
My favorite thing when you were pregnant was you just walking around with a little bottle of hot sauce. Like
I still do that.
No, I know, but it was especially funny when you were pregnant. Walking around with your little hot sauce.
It's probably why Grace is so spicy.
Oh, that is probably why. I wonder how much of an impact that has on them, because Mac likes a lot of the things that I ate when I was pregnant. And so I wonder if that does have an impact.
No, I was nervous that Grace would have like a peanut allergy because I ate so much peanut butter.
You did eat a lot of peanut butter. Peanut butter and hot sauce. Eggs. Right?
I still eat all of those things.
Well, of course. I didn't really like anything weird. I was too sick to crave weird things, So I really want to dive in, Nat, to the DV crisis in Louisiana, the mass shooting that's been reported. And this is a really, really important case given our clinical specialties, what we do every day. And so this is a tough one, but a really important one. Before we start, this episode discusses a mass shooting in which 8 children, ages 3 to 11, were killed by their father. 2 women are in critical condition as we record. And we're going to talk about family annihilation, firearm lethality in DV, and what the law does and does not do. We're not going to talk about details of the killings because there's really no point in that. But if you're in a hard place today, you might want to skip this one, and we will have resources at the end. But this is an important one for prevention. On Sunday morning, April 19th, 2026, in Shreveport, Louisiana, a 31-year-old man named Shamar Elkins shot his wife in one house, then drove to a second house and killed 8 children,
Mm.
7 of his own and a nephew, ages 3 to 11. He also shot a second woman, the mother of some of his children. Both women survived and were in critical condition at the time of this recording. Elkins fled, carjacked a vehicle, and was killed by police in a pursuit into Bossier Parish. The Caddo Parish District Attorney's Office described it accurately: a domestic dispute that ended in irreversible harm. And one city council member noted that this single event more than doubled Shreveport's homicide count for the year. A city councilwoman called DV in Shreveport what it is, an epidemic. So here's a couple things I was able to find that will help kind of ground our conversation. So Elkins and his wife were separating. They were due in court the next day, on Monday, today, reportedly to address the separation. So we know this is the highest risk time
for people to leave.
In intimate partnerships. The highest risk time for lethality is during a separation, coming up to a separation, informing of a separation, right? The second thing is Elkins had a 2019 conviction for illegal use of firearms. He fired 5 rounds at a vehicle about 300 feet from Caddo Magnet High School with children playing outside. So there were children outside, and he fired 5 rounds at a vehicle. He got 18 months probation. That's it. The
That's
accompanying
crazy.
charge, carrying a firearm on school property, was dismissed. So this is
That's
someone who
wild.
would fire a gun in close proximity to children, right? And we really didn't do anything. He got some probation time, but that's it.
Yeah.
And it makes me think this is like probably a deferred equivalent, right? Like he did his probation and then it was dismissed. Police said publicly they were not aware of any other DV issues. So it's not like the cops were out there all the time. And he used multiple firearms. So he didn't just do this with one firearm. He used multiple firearms. A handgun was found at the scene and a rifle-style pistol on his body. So there were really no Facebook posts, no social media issues, nothing that was an apparent warning sign. So it's not like some mass shootings where they'll kind of telegraph. 2 weeks before the killings, he posted a photo with his kids, captioned, "With all my kids, what a blessed day." A neighbor said the kids played in the yard every evening. So when we get into this a little bit, Nat, I'm curious for you. This is, I know, our like worst fear as DV therapists is that we're going to turn on the news and see one of our guys having done something like this. I mean, this is our job is to prevent this. We take it super seriously. What are you thinking over there, buddy, when you hear of a case like this?
So it's interesting. I don't know if this is probably not good to share, but I'm going to share it anyway.
Yeah.
I keep obviously seeing this horrific situation come up, and I keep avoiding it. I keep avoiding it, reading it, because the thought of 8 children dying is so painful to think about. And so I've been meaning to like look into it, but I just knew I was like, I need to be in a good headspace to, to actually read what happened, because I can't even imagine a parent taking their own children's lives, and then also additionally like a nephew or, a niece or a nephew, and just putting so many people in so much pain. That's what comes up for me.
No, 100%. It's interesting you say that, Nat, because I was not avoiding it, but I was definitely not digging into it when it popped up on my feed. And Tina got into it, and she said, "This is so important. You guys have to talk about this," because everything I tell her all the time, I'm driving home from work and I don't talk about specifics with clients, but I will tell her, this work is so important, or, We really had a breakthrough today, like stuff like that. And she
Mhm.
knows this is what's at stake. It's the weirdest job because you sit and you talk with people and you build these relationships, but we're not in their homes. We see them for an hour and a half a week. Sometimes they have a second contact. It's like 2.5 hours a week. And there's a lot of unaccounted for time
Mhm.
that things can and do happen. And so
Mhm.
it's sobering for me for sure
Mhm.
hearing about this. It's the worst possible outcome.
Yep. Yep.
Well, and when you think about like a mom
Mhm.
waking up in the hospital without her kids,
Oh
like
yeah, no, I can't even
I
imagine.
could just it's
Honestly, like take me.
no, well, that's I think
I'd
all
be
moms
done.
would say that, which is why the children are targeted sometimes
Yeah.
because that's
Yeah.
like the ultimate pain. So
Mhm.
what I want to get into a little bit is the idea of the family annihilator because I
Mhm.
don't think people understand this. And
Mhm.
I didn't understand this for a while as a DV clinician. And I still remember the training that I was in when they said, when a domestic violence client is suicidal, they may also be homicidal. And you have to safety plan all the way around that situation. And that was not intuitively obvious to me at all.
Mhm.
It really took me some time to wrap my head around, and it's because of a situation like this. So the definition of a family annihilator for a perpetrator is really narrow. It's
Mhm.
almost always a male head of household who kills multiple family members, typically a partner and their shared children, in a short time frame at one or a small number of locations. So this is, textbook that,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And there's a lot of things that can contribute to this, but many times it is a civil disruption. It's like a custody or
Mhm.
separation. Um, Sometimes it's a depressive, like despondent
Mhm.
reaction, but I would say more often it's a hostile, accusatory, like we're
Yeah.
gonna get in there and shut everything down that's causing me pain or making me angry or that I can't control,
Mhm.
right? And so when we look at different types of these people who annihilate whole families, there's a couple of themes. So there's a term called the livid coercive
Mhm.
perpetrator, which is a man driven by profound shame and rage who sees the impending dissolution of the family. So the wife is leaving, separation, loss of control. Maybe there's a new man in the picture who's interacting with their children, and it's just intolerable. It's
Mhm.
humiliating and it's intolerable. And so the murder is kind of considered murder by proxy. Like the children are not the primary object of the rage. They're killed because the perpetrator experiences them as extensions of their partner. The children are seen as allies or appendages of the mother, equally
Mhm.
responsible for the perceived betrayal. And it's important to note this isn't like psychosis or
Mhm.
a huge break. This is an ideology. My family is mine. If I can't have it, no one will.
Mhm.
And it is the endpoint of like the most extreme form of coercive control. So the reason this matters so much to me, I think there's a heaviness in my chest because we teach all the time on coercive control, and you can have people behave in a way that is unexpected in
Mhm.
this domain because the coercive control is a little bit more subtle, but it's building to something. And the
Mhm.
goal of coercive control is exactly what it says, to control the partner
Mhm.
all the way to death if necessary,
Mhm.
right? And so obviously not every offender takes it to this level, but it can be a little hard to know
Mhm.
what's going to happen. There were some warning signs in this case, but overall, not necessarily um, a straight line in these
Mhm.
cases. And so it makes them really scary. Like we say, we're great at predicting risk, right? We are not good at predicting actual violence.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that rings in my head all the time. Every time I do an assessment, it's like, okay, I can dial in the risk. We can even get to risk of recidivism, like
Mhm.
percentiles in the ODERA. You know what I mean? Like we
Mhm.
can get in there, but we are not great as a society for a lot of reasons. We're not great at predicting real violence, who will actually cross that line or not. And so, Nat, I was hoping you might share a little bit of the legal system signals, the things that were happening legally.
Yeah. So things that correlate with familicide in the research, and several of these are publicly documented in the Shreveport case as we record. So pending or recent separation. In the studies, separation is one of the most consistent proximal risk markers. So again, when someone files for separation, it's not even necessarily always when, but it's when it's about to be documented, right? It's when it's about to be like the separation or the divorce is going to be finalized.
And offenders have a sixth sense. Like they do pick up on differences.
Yep. Prior history of domestic violence, you and I talk about this all the time. Charged, suspected, or reported. One U.S. study found 51% of familicide offenders had been previously suspected of or charged with domestic violence. Another research article found 25% had prior DV-related arrests. So this is huge, huge, huge when it comes to recidivism and escalation.
Yeah.
Firearm access. And here's the thing, we're not saying that all people with firearms are going to shoot people or, go on a crazy spree. But this does, when people who have that mindset have access to firearms, who have been arrested for domestic violence or have power and control dynamics within their relationship, this increased that risk.
Yes. And access is not just have it on their person. Access means how many barriers are between them and that weapon and that act.
Yep.
Right? So how far away is it? I mean, these are things we assess for with our clients.
Yep. A history of weapon offenses or violent incidences outside of the home. So this one's wild to me because, not wild, it actually makes total sense. I think this one throws other people off.
Yes.
So I'll talk to people who will say, yeah, I was driving and got mad at this guy, so I flashed my gun.
Oh, that happens like a disturbing amount of times.
It really does. And I'm like, that, and then they get a DV and they're like, well, my DV didn't involve a firearm. I'm like, it doesn't matter. First of all, it doesn't matter in general whether you have prior offenses or not with firearms. But the fact that you have a prior offense of of flashing it in a road rage situation increases your chances of using that in a domestic violence situation.
Yes. And don't get
That's just true.
Like holding a gun to someone isn't that different than cleaning a gun in front of someone. Or moving the gun just in case. This was a big learning curve for me in the beginning. I had a case where a man literally packed up a gun and put it away for safety during a fight. And it's like, that is so unbelievably intimidating, but like wrapped up in some kind of weird twisty bow. You know what I mean? And we hear this stuff all the time.
Control dynamics. Here's the hard part. Control dynamics that neighbors, coworkers, and extended family often don't see and don't label. So this one's interesting. What do you think about that one?
Well, okay. I think I've shared this story on the pod, so apologies if you've heard this, but also it's really important. We had that couple that we knew where the woman made the joke, if you ever see him with a black eye, I'm dead. And I go back to that in my brain so many times because it was before I was super involved in domestic violence work. And now I would have been on that even more than I was then. But we are so hesitant to label domestic violence behavior and power and control. I think girlfriends will do that for each other, but I don't think couples get into this with their like couple friends. I don't think people really do anything. And partially because these folks can be intimidating, but also we're kind of in a hands-off society where we're like, geez, that doesn't look like it's very fun at home. But we don't necessarily want to get involved. And it's not that we should get involved. It's just we're hesitant to label it. People get offended. And also, survivors, victims in these dynamics are typically, until they leave, very protective of the offender. And so you can lose friendships over this. I'm sure a lot of people listening have lost friendships over expressing concerns. They feel
100%.
judged and
100%.
afraid and whatever, and they'll cut off the person who's getting in there. And the abuser is very likely to encourage that. They don't support us. They're not for us. They,
Well, and oftentimes too, right? Like they'll say, so if they don't see it, it's because they are schmoozy. Or if they don't see it for a long time and then see aspects of it, the offender can try to rewrite the narrative, right?
Yeah.
So maybe they'll be really accountable to the neighbor, but they're not really accountable in their home.
Yep. Or it's
Right,
a stressor. Work's been so hard.
Yes.
Right?
And, I should have never raised my voice. I'm so sorry you guys had to see that. That doesn't happen. I've been so stressed. Like they'll say all the things to other people, but in the home, it's a totally different story.
That's right. We have the problem of no warning signs here, which I kind of mentioned, but just because there hadn't been reported incidents doesn't mean there weren't incidents. Very rarely does this get reported until it hits a certain threat level. And it's interesting because we score this on the DVRNA when we're assessing offenders, any past incidents, and it throws them for a loop. They're like, I've only been arrested this one time. I've never been arrested in 60 years, here I am. And it's like, well, sometimes that's true. And it was a weird situation, but a lot of times there's decades of coercive behavior and power and control happening in the home. So we're not trying to figure out what his psychological profile is. Like, I'm not looking at any of his stuff. We know very little about him. And he died, so I don't know how much information we'll ever get. But it's a good reminder that you can't go off social media or somebody's affect in pictures or even in person to know what's going on behind closed doors. You kind of have to be there. And we don't. We don't. Even the people closest to us, we don't see their life behind closed doors.
Yeah.
I think it'd be good to talk, Nat, for a moment about the data related to firearms, because you and I have talked openly on the pod that we're not necessarily anti-firearm. I don't think people care what our opinions are on this stuff anyway. The data is what it is, though, and it matters so much because it's consistent. So when we talk about separation being a consistent marker in the research, firearm data is consistent in the research for years and years and years.
Yep. Well, and I mean, so one of the most replicated findings in intimate partner homicide literature from Campbell and colleagues' 2003 multi-site case control study of femicide is when an abuser has access to a firearm, the risk of intimate partner homicide goes up by roughly 5 times, which is...
We'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Southeast Counseling Center. Southeast Counseling Center is a 501c3 nonprofit mental health provider right here in Parker, Colorado, conveniently located just off major highways. We serve the whole family, from play therapy for kids to couples and family therapy, trauma treatment, psychological testing, and specialized groups. Access matters. That's why Southeast Counseling Center accepts Medicaid, Tri-West, and victim compensation, and also offers a community subsidy program to help people who fall in the gap between Medicaid and traditional insurance coverage. And because we're a nonprofit, every dollar donated by the community goes directly towards providing treatment services for people who need help. Prefer to meet at home? Telehealth is available statewide, so anyone in Colorado can access our services. To get started, call 720-842-5553 or fill out our secure web inquiry form at secounseling.org. Southeast Counseling Center, care that is accessible, compassionate, and rooted in the community. Nuts.
Oh yeah. And I've heard as high as 7.
Oh, okay.
But I think
Yeah.
5 is like the consistent number, but I've heard even higher.
Yeah. No, it's wild.
And when we talk about the lethality review board in Colorado, where they look at every single case in a year and who the victims are, there's collateral victims every single year. And a collateral victim just means it's someone outside of the dynamic.
Right.
So outside of the primary target, which is typically the partner or former partner. And it is almost always children, sometimes a previous partner, but extended family and children. And then in extreme cases, bystanders. Right? So when I went to that training, and I talk about it like constantly, I should have recorded the whole freaking thing. It was amazing that whole day in Colorado Springs when we had the DA from Arapahoe for the James Holmes shooting. I learned so much about mass shootings that day. It was a whole day on mass shootings from experts, FBI, whole 9 yards. And an analysis of U.S. mass shootings from 2014 to 2019 found that 60% were either domestic violence attacks or committed by someone with a history of domestic violence. So one of the points that I think is really important, and I submitted a paper that I'm hoping to get to present about this, but when we're trying to figure out what causes mass shootings, and that includes even in teenagers, whatever, we have to look at domestic violence, intergenerational violence and domestic violence, because it is often a precursor to mass shootings, mass killings. And the other thing is when you've had threats leading up to, and this makes all kinds of sense, but we don't clock it, or if we clock it, we don't take the next step. Many, many times you will see threats to kill, threats with a weapon, controlling behavior. Stepchildren in the home is also a risk factor. And the abuser's unemployment all individually elevate femicide risk.
That's wild.
And unemployment in particular was the single strongest social risk factor.
I believe that. Well,
Does
we
that
asked
make
that.
sense in a
We
weird
asked
way?
that. Yeah. We asked that when we do the DVRNA.
And it's so important because why? Why does unemployment matter when it comes to domestic violence and mass shootings?
Well, my immediate answer is you have too much time on your hands.
100%. It is literally that simple sometimes. Sense of self, that stuff.
Sense of self, insecurity, right? So too much time, and then you add in all of the extra things.
Yes.
That people tend to struggle with, right?
Financial pressure.
All
which
of it.
often leads to separations. Like it just cascades, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things they're doing is they've been talking a lot about the Louisiana numbers specifically. And you and I get so fascinated. This is when we nerd out because we were just in a big 2-day training. And I really think this research is interesting about how all the different states do it and what their outcomes are. And Colorado tracks it a lot closer than a lot of states where the providers release data to the state with permission, of course, and it's anonymous, but we release data so that they can dig in. So what's going on in Louisiana?
Well, Louisiana, side note, my dad was raised in Louisiana. Different.
It's
just different.
Way different.
So in 2025, Louisiana Domestic Abuse Fatality Review report which was released in February of 2026. It covers 2020 to 2023 statewide, but this is what that report said. 244 Louisiana residents died from intimate partner violence between 2020 and 2023.
That is a high number.
That's a very high number.
That's a very high number.
Very high number. 87% of those deaths involved a firearm, which is also a very high number. That is significantly higher than the national average. Louisiana has ranked in the top 5 states for women murdered by men almost every year since 1997, which is nuts.
That's wild.
I hate to say it this way. I'm not like, I mean, I'm surprised. The number is much higher than I would have thought, but I'm not surprised that Louisiana's up there.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think sometimes with some of the more southern states, there's some pretty strong, how do I say this?
Well, they have a lack of resources. I mean, those are some
They
of our
have
poorer states, less
100% lack of
resources.
resources, but also like mindset wise, there's just a
Mhm.
lot of like old thinking, right?
Don't
Like,
tread on me.
yeah, well, don't try it on me, but just the very historical traditional type of home,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Southern Bible Belt, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Which tracks with the male head of household, which again is not, we're not
Yeah.
saying any of that's a problem. It's just
no,
that is a part of, when taken to extremes,
yes,
mentality that can lead to somebody saying, it's my
Yes.
family.
yes,
They can't leave. They're with me, or they don't get to
correct.
live at all.
That's what I was trying to say. You said it
Yeah.
much better.
Well, it took me a minute, but I got you, boo.
You got me. I know.
got
I could see the wheels turning for you, and I was like, I don't think I'm saying it the way that I want to,
Like, I'm gonna get it.
but we'll land there at
Yeah,
some
I'm
point.
not as quick as usual this week.
That's
I'm like
okay. That's okay.
buffering.
But that's what I was
Like I'm
saying. That's why I
buffering.
was saying Louisiana's kind of higher up there, and then also lack of resources.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in the most recent violence policy center analysis of 2020 data, Louisiana was 5th with 98% of female homicide victims killed by someone they knew.
That's outrageous.
Yeah.
I don't have the numbers for Colorado in front of me, but this is vastly different than what we see in Colorado.
Yes. In another review, 81% of victims were female, 86% of suspects were male, 87% of homicide victims died by firearms, 25% of suspects had a prior history of domestic violence abuse, nearly 60% had prior criminal offenses or charges, and then 28% of cases followed a recent separation.
Oh, man.
Of cases reviewed, 50 children either witnessed or were present at the homicide. It's all horrible.
That's horrible.
44 children lost one or both parents.
We'll be right back.
If you work with court-ordered clients, you already know the system can be overwhelming. Documentation, coordination, compliance tracking, billing, on top of actually doing the therapy. That's why we want to tell you about Reliatrax, a one-stop platform built specifically for therapists working in the court-ordered space and voluntary treatment. Reliatrax helps you stay connected with probation and referral sources so everyone's on the same page and your clients get the best care possible without the endless emails, calls, and paperwork. And here's the exciting part. Reliatrax now offers Aura, their new AI assistant. Aura helps streamline documentation, keeps you organized, and supports your workflow so you can spend less time clicking boxes and more time doing clinical work. Reliatrax also supports insurance billing, including Medicaid, making it easier to serve both court-ordered and voluntary clients all in one system. No juggling platforms and no workarounds. And the other amazing thing is you have an actual team of people who can support you, not some automated system. If you're looking for a smarter, more efficient way to manage compliance, communication, and care, Reliatrax was built for this. Check out Reliatrax and see how it can support you, your clients, and the systems you work in without burning you out. You can go to www.reliatrax.com to get started. I think that's the focus with this, Nat, that drives me nuts and is so any life lost is too many. Any single one. But these 50 children, these collateral, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the 44 that lost a parent,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's how we have to look at this one, is the kids.
Mm-hmm.
The kids. They were in a concentrated, catastrophic instance of a pattern that's running in the background in the state. And this happens sometimes in states where something comes up and it gets everybody's attention. And then what they do with that is going to matter a lot. And when you look at their numbers versus like Colorado, it's pretty clear to me. I don't know a lot of details, but it's pretty clear to me they have work to do. Every state has work to do. But Louisiana has some work to do.
Yeah. No, for sure.
So that freaking 2019 case, conviction for illegal use of weapons. If I was a parent and had a kid at that school, I would never shut up about it. I would yell about it for 3 hours a day at anyone who would listen, and they probably did. The issue with this firearm offense that he had, under federal law, firearm possession is prohibited after a qualifying felony conviction or a specific misdemeanor crime of domestic violence. Because his 2019 disposition, meaning like plea, didn't meet either of those thresholds, right? So because it wasn't a felony and it wasn't a specific misdemeanor crime of DV because he was shooting at the school.
Which is so,
vehicle.
like, how is that not a felony? How is that not a felony?
That's wild to me. Well, deferred. It probably was a felony charge, but it wasn't a felony.
If you are shooting a gun at anything,
I know,
that is not a literal immediate threat in your home or you whatever.
But we have clients who've discharged firearms in their home or pulled a firearm out in their home, and some of them have had deferreds. This is this tricky thing. And so because it wasn't DV specifically, he was not federally prohibited from having a firearm.
He's shooting it at a school.
Louisiana, I know. Louisiana has the 2018 firearm transfer statute, which addresses relinquishment following certain DV orders, but it's not implemented consistently. And this we do see in Colorado, where sometimes a jurisdiction just gets right in there and gets the weapons and goes to the house and does it. And then sometimes there's a lag or a delay, or it's just treated differently. Right? And I guess what I want to say, and I want your thoughts on it, weapons offenses without formal DV doesn't trigger federal prohibition. And the reason that's problematic is if we have these two things running side by side and they just haven't intersected yet, they're going to. They're very likely to. If you're willing to use a firearm in this context over here, armed robbery, shooting at the neighbor's house, like whatever, if you're willy-nilly with a weapon over here, you're likely to eventually do that over on the other side, on the DV side. And so I think we need to take the weapons charges so much more seriously than we do the first time. Like, that's it. Like, I'm sorry, you don't need to have a firearm if you're firing on a school, whether it's DV related or not, or even it wasn't on the school technically. I suppose it was a vehicle near the school. But what are we doing? Like, why you never get a firearm again? I'm sorry.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, we are harsher on kindergartners. If you hit him with a ruler, you don't get the ruler back. It's as simple as that. This is like, you shoot in the direction of a school, and here you go.
You're done.
Here's your firearm. Like,
oh my
that
gosh,
is messed up. I'm sorry.
No,
that is so messed up. And in Colorado, we have the extreme risk protection orders, and we've come a long way in Colorado in terms of being able to intervene in firearms. So here's something interesting, Nat. When we talk about the laws in Louisiana.
Yep, I got you.
This is kind of that old school thing, not old school, different than Colorado, where household member includes current or former cohabitants and any children.
Yep.
So that this is where it gets kind of, I think the language in states where domestic violence can include family members gets harder.
Yeah.
On treatment. and I think for the courts to hold them accountable.
Mhm.
Domestic violence in Colorado is only between intimate partners.
Right.
And then you
And
can
if
have
there's,
assault, which is child abuse. You can have, you know what I
I
mean?
was gonna say, like, I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, right? It's like you get a charge with a DV enhancer,
That's right.
or you get a charge with a child abuse enhancer.
Exactly. So if you hit your kid, it's assault, child
With
abuse,
yes,
right?
you hit your partner, it's assault, domestic
Yes.
violence.
Yes.
Yep.
In Louisiana, that's a little bit muddier.
Mm-hmm.
First conviction of domestic violence within that framework is typically $300 to $1,000 fine, 30 days to 6 months imprisonment, and mandatory enrollment in DV, domestic abuse intervention programs. And then there's a firearm prohibition for the duration just of the sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Second conviction, $750 to $1,000, 60 days to 1 year, at least 14 days served without the benefit of parole, probation, suspension, and required completion of a program. And then the enhancements, this part I actually like, to be frank.
Mm-hmm.
These are enhancements. Colorado, I'm sure, has their own. I don't know all the specifics, but presence of a child 13 or younger adds up to 3 years at hard labor.
Good.
Pregnancy of the victim known by the offender adds up to 3 years. Strangulation adds up to 3 years.
Good.
Or 5 to 50 years if serious bodily injury results. Burning follows a parallel enhancement structure, and a dangerous weapon producing serious bodily injury adds up to 15 years. Now, that doesn't mean they're getting those sentences. So Colorado has
Right. That's like the
pretty
charge.
intense sentencing as well.
Mm-hmm.
But what actually sticks is different. So
Mhm.
here's where Nat and I can really bring our expertise. Okay. In Louisiana, they have a 26 session minimum over a minimum of 26 weeks, meaning they can't double up. Okay. So we're talking about, 6 months ish of treatment. That's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The offender has to pay for treatment. And if they don't pay, it can trigger probation revocation unless they're indigent. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I have issues with this. So many issues. What issues do we have?
The time, 6 months,
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
it's too short.
Yep.
It's way too short. We have a minimum of 9 months. And sometimes I'm like, thankfully, and I won't get into it, it might be changing. But as of right now, right, like it's a minimum of 9 months. And that's minimum. And it's progress based in Colorado. So like,
Yes. Yes.
and we get up to 9 months and there's some of our more pro-social humans and we're like, we still maybe got a month.
There's still a piece we're figuring out.
Or there's still some stuff we're working on. And so 6 months, that's nuts.
Well, and even California, there's wonderful work done in California, but they're 26 weeks or 52. They finally separated it and went, some aren't as high risk as others. Let's split it up. In Louisiana, same duration for every offender, regardless of risk level.
Mm.
And there's no statutory requirement for a validated risk assessment to determine the dose of treatment.
Oh my God.
There's no MTT requirement. Right?
That's horrible.
There's no statutory requirement for a victim advocate as part of the treatment team.
So really quick, MTT, for those of you guys who are new here, it's multidisciplinary treatment team. So what that encompasses is treatment, probation, and victim advocate, and then like other team members, right? So like if they're in a second contact, that provider, or if they are seeing an outside therapist, they are actually now a part of the MTT. So that's what we're talking about with MTT.
Yes. And they don't have we have the DVOMB in Colorado that oversees the providers. And I mean, it is strict and it's work to do this work. You have to meet standards, demonstrate that you understand. There's a lot of training. That is not the case. Basically, the facilitator credentialing is kind of handled like program by program. They don't really have a board. And so what I think is really hopeful in the midst of a terrible thing, this has put a big spotlight on DV in Louisiana, and it's about damn time. The same report that was released just last month recommended some really important things.
Mm.
The first is having a standard operating procedure for firearm transfer, meaning that when firearms come out of somebody's home, there's like a set way that happens and where it goes. And addressing the uneven implementation of that. So making sure that we don't get a wild hair and somebody's like, yeah, man, hang on to your firearms, whatever. You don't need to document it. It needs to be consistent. Like whatever the standard is, needs to be the standard. Establish uniform batterer intervention program standards with court monitoring. So they're saying, hey, like, let's make these the same.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, these clients shop around, especially if it's not their first offense. They're like, what's the cheapest? Can I go online? And is there somebody I can snow potentially? Right? Like some clients come in and they really want to change and they're wonderful. Some of them come in, this is not their first rodeo and it shows, you know?
Yep. Yeah.
And then also they're mandating or recommending a mandate for recurring DV skills checks for law enforcement. Love that. Victim-centered recurring DV training, predominant aggressor identification, strangulation documentation. So they're really pushing for education. And we know like the Petitos are doing this nationally. Like get in there and make the right call when you show up at the scene, which is not easy, but it's so important. And then they're also talking about increasing funding, which they really need to do. Right?
That's a big deal.
So I guess the hopeful thing, first of all, Nat, you found that one of the kids survived.
Yeah, so I was reading a little bit and there were, I believe, 9 targeted kids. And one of them survived by getting themselves out, I think by a window and a roof. I'm not going to
What
go
a
into any
horrific thing to live with. I mean, I'm thankful they survived, but
yeah. Yeah, so one child survived. The 2 moms survived, 2 women.
yeah. Are they still in critical condition?
I think so, but they're alive. So I think, I mean, you know, I don't want to be too candid because that could be super triggering, but you know, I can't imagine going through the pain that these women went through and are going to continue to go through when they if and when they survive this. But also the other kiddo. I cannot imagine the agony they're going to be in. I think my hope is that I don't even want to say it this way. I just like states need to wake up, you know, like the Petito situation woke up some of the more West states, right?
Yeah.
It woke up Utah.
Oh, it woke up Utah.
I believe Wyoming, because Tetons are over in that area.
Yep.
And Colorado, I would say. You know, I mean, Colorado, like, I feel like we're already pretty strict, but I mean, shoot, there's some districts that were like, oh, you're in that district, like, of course you didn't get arrested, or of course they gave you like a whatever, and that's unfortunate. But I think the unfortunate thing is that when these cases happen, it wakes the states up, and there has to be change. There has to be advocacy in a much stronger way, so that, you know, when people are going through separation, you know, maybe with people who have histories of gun violence, regardless if it's domestic violence or not, they're going to sit there and be like, you know what, like, it doesn't really matter. There's a mandatory whatever, right? Like they cannot have contact. I don't know. I'm just like shooting from the hip here, but
part of it is
there has to be change.
Responsivity. When we really get into what, and I'm thinking of my wonderful colleagues in the field who've really helped drive this home, that it's, you know, criminogenic needs, which is not where people go with DV as often as they should.
Yeah.
Colorado in 2006 was still doing a flat 36 weeks, and we still hear about it 20 years later. 20 years later. we still have probation occasionally, very occasionally, but it does still come up, or clients who will come in and they'll be like 36 weeks, right? And the work that Colorado has put into educating people that it needs to be based on the individual.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that's really tough, and Nat, I think of this in light of the kiddo getting away.
Mm-hmm.
There are real victims. And so I think sometimes this is the tension we live in. We get comfortable with this population because we work with them and they treat us great. They're usually pretty, I mean, we've had our moments, believe me, but we're not their wife. We're not. So they show up in treatment often different than they do at home. And we know that. And we still care about them and we see real change.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're really thinking about risk and looking at what is happening with these folks, we have to tailor it to the individual. And it has to be in proportion to what they need. Like, we have to really look at what they need, their risk of doing this again. And I kind of hate to say it this way, but I think it's just the truth. If we just hand out the same dose of treatment to everybody, right? And we're not looking at what happened and what the impact was. Like, the judicial system is supposed to look at that impact. What is the impact? Like, what would the consequence have been if he had not died, if the perpetrator had not died?
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. But when I look at this, it's like we have to think about the victims and hold that tension and that line as treatment providers, where we care and we're invested and we believe it can work. Otherwise, you should not do this work at all.
Right.
But we make a lot of accommodations for people and we get really comfortable when the person on the receiving end of this violence may have thought it was their last day on earth, may have watched something happen to their child, may have been pregnant and got pushed down and wondered if their baby was okay. Like, those are real outcomes. And yeah, we have some where they throw a cell phone, still matters, still an escalation. But we see real violence every day. And I think this is such a good reminder of how we can get from one thing to the other.
Right. And to be really aware of it, right? Like, I mean,
Yes.
like you said, you and I've worked with cases on all types of, continuums. And at the end of the day, like, abuse is abuse and it escalates. And we have to remember that as treatment providers.
Yes. And pray and hope that the states catch up and implement treatment that hopefully works and holds people accountable and helps them change, because we don't want to lose any more families this way, like never again. And you've got to talk to your legislators. You've got to use your voice, vote for people who have a plan for this stuff, who know what they're talking about. And, I'm kind of thinking as we come to the end and we have some resources and stuff, I don't know. I'm thinking of these 3 little boys and 5 little girls who lost their lives. And I'm hopeful that the women will survive. They're still in critical condition. I hope they survive. How can we prevent the next one? And we have to support survivors. We have to listen to children, and we have to intervene in a formidable research-based way that gives us the best shot.
Yeah.
Not of predicting actual violence, but predicting the risk of violence accurately.
Yeah.
And then applying treatment appropriately.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to take.
Yeah. Which, Colorado, we are cutting edge and we are leaning in to that.
I love doing this work in Colorado, and I'll say it every day of my career, which I plan to do till I'm 85. Can you imagine an 85-year-old DV provider? I'm ready. I just think,
you know what? If someone doesn't listen to an 85-year-old DV provider, what are you doing with your life?
oh my God, we're going to be such badasses by 85. Can you imagine? I'm not going to take crap off of nobody.
No.
And I'm going to have all kinds of magical abilities by then, because we learn all the time. Well, if you're at home listening or in your car or wherever you are, and you have some exposure to domestic violence, whether you're a survivor yourself or you know someone in trouble, you can call the domestic violence hotline at 1-800-799-7233, or you can text START to 88788. So you can text the word START to 88788. And really, those are the best resources for getting a plan for yourself. Don't leave without a plan if you can help it. If you can't help it, just get out. But if you can plan with a victim advocate or a professional that really understands how to keep you safe. And Nat and I work with several. We've had several colleagues that have run crisis centers and done some incredible work, and they've been so helpful to us. Get help to leave the right way so that you can be safe if you can help it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
one of the scariest nights of my entire life, Nat, was when one of our mutual friends left an abusive situation, and it was so scary, and we didn't know where they were or what was going to happen. And it just, it still breaks my heart when I think about it. And so I think about the fear.
And then the emotional terrorism that happened after.
Oh, 100%.
Horrible.
I hope people get the help that they need. And so I'm sorry this is a somber one, but it's just unbelievably important.
Yeah. Yeah. And like Janine said, there are resources out there for this. And let us know. Like, you can always DM us if we can't be your therapist and we won't play that role, but what we will do is look up resources. And so, if you're having a hard time doing that, or like for whatever reason, your social media is the safest place for you to look up resources, then let us know.
Absolutely. Well, y'all be safe, and we'll see you next week as always.
Bye, forensic friends.
I'm Janine.
And I'm Nat.
And as always, thanks for listening, and join us next week for more Crime, Psychology, and Heart.